Abraham Harold Maslow was born April 1st, 1908 in Brooklyn, New York. He was the first of 7 children born to his parents, who themselves were uneducated Jewish immigrants from Russia. His parents, hoping for the best for their children in the new world, pushed him hard for academic success, and not surprisingly he became very lonely as a boy and found his refuge in books. To satisfy his parents, he first studied law at the City College of New York, and then after 3 semesters he transferred to Cornell and then back to CCNY. He married Bertha Goodman, who was his first cousin, against his parents' wishes. Abe and Bertha went on to have 7 children of their own. He and Bertha moved to Wisconsin so that he could attend the university there. Here he became interested in psychology, and his schoolwork began to improve dramatically. He spent time there working with Harry Harlow, who's famous for his experiments with baby rhesus monkeys and attachment behaviour. He received his BA in 1930, his MA in 1931, and his PhD in 1934, all in psychology and all from the University of Wisconsin. A year after graduation, he returned to New York to work with E.L. Thorndike at Columbia, where Maslow became interested in research on human sexuality. He began teaching full-time at Brooklyn College, and during this period of his life he came into contact with the many European intellectuals that were emigrating to the US, and Brooklyn in particular at that time, people like Adler, Fromm, Horney, as well as several Gestalt and Freudian psychologists. In 1951, Maslow served as the chair of the psychology department at Brandeis for 10 years, where he met Kurt Goldstein, who introduced him to the idea of self-actualization, and he then began his own theoretical work. It was also here that he began his crusade for a humanistic psychology, something ultimately much more important to him than his own theorizing. He spent his final years in semi-retirement in California, until on June 8, 1970, he died of a heart attack after years of ill health. One of the many interesting things that Maslow noticed while he worked with monkeys early in his career was that some needs take precedence over others. For example, if you're hungry and thirsty, you'll tend to try and take care of the thirst first. After all, you can do without food for weeks, but you can only do without water for a couple of days. Thirst is a stronger need than hunger. Likewise, if you're very, very thirsty, but someone's put a chokehold on you and you can't breathe, which is more important? The need to breathe, of course. On the other hand, sex is less powerful than any of these. Let's face it, you won't die if you don't get it. Maslow took this idea and created his now famous hierarchy of needs. Beyond the details of air, water, food and sex, he laid out 5 broader layers: the physiological needs, the needs for safety and security, the needs for love and belonging, the needs for esteem, and the need to actualize the self, in that order. The physiological needs. These include the needs we have for oxygen, water, protein, salt, sugar, calcium, and other minerals and vitamins. They also include the need to maintain a pH balance. Getting too acidic or base will kill you. And temperature, 98.6 or near to it. Also there's needs to be active, to rest, to sleep, to get rid of wastes, CO2, sweat, urine and feces, to avoid pain, and to have sex. Quite a collection. Maslow believed, and research supports him, that these are in fact individual needs, and that a lack of, say, vitamin C will lead to a very specific hunger for things which have in the past provided that vitamin C, for example orange juice. I guess the cravings that some pregnant women have, and the way in which babies eat the most foul-tasting baby food, support the idea anecdotally. 2. The safety and security needs. When the physiological needs are largely taken care of, this second layer of needs comes into play. You'll become increasingly interested in finding safe circumstances, stability, protection. You might develop a need for structure, for order, some limits. Looking at it negatively, you become concerned not with needs like hunger and thirst, but with your fears and anxieties. In the ordinary adult, this set of needs manifest themselves in the form of our urges to have a home in a safe neighbourhood, a little job security and a nest egg, a good retirement plan, a bit of insurance, and so on. 3. The love and belonging needs. When physiological needs and safety needs are by and large taken care of, a third layer starts to show up. You begin to feel the need for friends, a sweetheart, children, maybe, affectionate relationships in general, even a sense of community. Looked at negatively, you become increasingly susceptible to loneliness and social anxieties. In our day-to-day life, we exhibit these needs in our desires to marry, have a family, be part of a community, member of a church, brother in the fraternity, part of a gang, or a bowling club. It's also part of what we look for in a career. 4. The esteem needs. Next, we begin to look for a little self-esteem. Maslow noted 2 versions of esteem needs, a lower one and a higher one. The lower one is the need for the respect of others, the need for status, fame, glory, recognition, attention, reputation, appreciation, dignity, even dominance. The higher form involves the need for self-respect, including such feelings as confidence, competence, achievement, mastery, independence, and freedom. Note this is the higher form because, unlike the respect of others, once you have self-respect, it's a lot harder to lose. The negative version of these needs is low self-esteem and inferiority complexes. Maslow felt that Adler was really onto something when he proposed that these were at the roots of many, if not most, of our psychological problems. In modern countries, most of us have what we need in regard to our physiological and safety needs. We more often than not have quite a bit of love and belonging too. It's a little respect that often seems so very hard to get. All of the preceding 4 levels he calls deficit needs or D needs. If you don't have enough of something, i.e. you have a deficit, you feel the need. But if you get all you need, you feel nothing at all. In other words, they cease to be motivating. As the old blues song goes, you don't miss your water till your well runs dry. He also talks about these levels in terms of homeostasis. Homeostasis is the principle by which your furnace thermostat operates. When it gets too cold, it switches the heat on. When it gets too hot, it switches the heat off. In the same way, your body, when it lacks a certain substance, develops a hunger for it. So when it gets enough of it, then the hunger stops. Maslow simply extends the homeostatic principle to needs, such as safety, belonging, and esteem, that we don't ordinarily think of in these terms. Maslow sees all these needs as essentially survival needs. Even love and esteem are needed for the maintenance of health. He says we all have these needs built into us genetically like instincts. In fact, he calls them instinctoid, instinct-like needs. In terms of overall development, we move through these levels a bit like stages. As newborns, our focus, if not our entire set of needs, is on the physiological. Soon we begin to recognize that we need to be safe, and soon after that we crave attention and affection. A bit later, we look for self-esteem. Under stressful conditions, or when survival is threatened, we can regress to a lower need level. When your great career falls flat, you might seek out a little attention. When your family ups and leaves you, it seems that love is again all you ever wanted. When you face chapter 11 after a long and happy life, you suddenly can't think of anything except money. These things can occur on a society-wide basis as well. When society suddenly flounders, people start clamouring for a strong leader to take over and make things right. When the bombs start falling, they look for safety. When the food stops coming into the stores, their needs become even more basic. Maslow suggested that we can ask people for their philosophy of the future. What would their ideal life or world be like? And get significant information as to what needs they do or do not have covered. If you have significant problems along your development, a period of extreme insecurity or hunger as a child, or the loss of a family member through death or divorce or significant neglect or abuse, you may fixate on that set of needs for the rest of your life. This is Maslow's understanding of neurosis. Perhaps you went through a war as a kid. And now you have everything your heart needs, yet you still find yourself obsessing over having enough money and keeping the pantry well stocked. Or perhaps your parents divorced when you were young. Now you have a wonderful spouse, and yet you get insanely jealous or worry constantly they're going to leave you because you're not good enough for them. You get the picture? Self-actualization, the last level. It's a bit different. Maslow's used a variety of terms to refer to this level. He's called it growth motivation, in contrast to deficit motivation, being needs or B needs, in contrast to D needs, and self-actualization. These are needs that don't involve balance or homeostasis. Once engaged, they continue to be felt. In fact, they're likely to become stronger as we feed them. They involve the continuous desire to fulfill potentials, to be all that you can be. They're a matter of becoming the most complete, the fullest you, hence the term self-actualization. Now, in keeping with his theory up to this point, if you want to be truly self-actualizing, you need to have your lower needs taken care of, at least to a considerable extent. This makes sense. If you're hungry, you're scrambling to get food. If you're unsafe, you have to be continuously on guard. If you're isolated and unloved, you have to satisfy that need. If you have a low sense of self-esteem, you have to be defensive or compensate. So when lower needs are unmet, you can't fully devote yourself to fulfilling your potentials. It isn't surprising then, the world being as difficult as it is, that only a small percentage of the world's population is truly, predominantly self-actualizing. Maslow at one point suggested only about 2%. What do you think? The question becomes, of course, what exactly does Maslow mean by self-actualization? To answer that, we need to look at the kind of people he called self-actualizers. Fortunately, he did this for us. He began by picking out a group of people, some historical figures, some people he knew, who he felt clearly met the standard of self-actualization, and included in this group were people like Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, Mahatma Gandhi, Albert Einstein, Eleanor Roosevelt, William James, Benedict Spinoza, and others.